from Public Radio International. This is The World, a co-production of the BBC World Service, PRI, and WGBH Boston. It's Tuesday, June 22nd. I'm Marco Werman. The top U.S. general in Afghanistan may be in trouble with the boss. General McChrystal's job is on the line after he and his aides were quoted in a magazine article criticizing the Obama administration. Also, the World Cup has a global audience, including prisoners at Guantanamo. We find out which team they're rooting for. Plus, using a pop culture touchstone to teach international relations.
Your average 18-year-old knows a lot more about zombies than they do about international relations theories.
Now this news.
BBC News with David Austin. The White House has refused to say that America's top military commander in Afghanistan is safe in his job, after he and his aides made derogatory remarks about President Obama's administration. General Stanley McChrystal has been summoned to a meeting with the president on Wednesday to explain the comments, which the White House said made Mr. Obama angry. The remarks feature in a magazine article to be published later this week. A White House spokesman, Robert Gibbs, was asked if General McChrystal would be asked to resign given his significance to the operations in Afghanistan.
Our efforts in Afghanistan are bigger than one person. There was a strategy that was born out of discussions on both the military and the civilian side. There is not a military solution alone to this problem, because if you cannot hold an area, if the type of governance structure cannot be created in order to secure that area, then you can't transfer it. So this is bigger than anybody on the military or the civilian side.
A U.S. judge has ruled against President Obama's declaration of a 6-month moratorium on deepwater oil drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, which was imposed because of the pollution crisis. The White House immediately said it was appealing against the decision. Lawyers for the oil industry told a federal court in New Orleans that the ban, imposed after the explosion of an oil rig in April, was destroying what it called an entire ecosystem of businesses. The coalition government in Britain has presented tough austerity measures to try to bring down a massive budget deficit. The Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, told Parliament that they were vital to tackle the deficit, which is one of the largest in the developed world.
This emergency budget deals decisively with our country's record debts. It pays for the past and it plans for the future. It supports a strong enterprise-led recovery. It rewards work, and it protects the most vulnerable in our society. Yes, it is tough, but it is also fair.
Among the measures announced are a 2.5% increase in the VAT sales tax, cuts in welfare spending, a freeze on public sector pay, and a levy on banks. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has set up a panel to look into possible human rights abuses during the final stages of Sri Lanka's civil war last year. Barbara Plett reports from the United Nations.
It is not an investigative body, and its mandate is vague: to advise the Secretary-General on a process of accountability for alleged human rights violations carried out in the closing months of Sri Lanka's civil war. This reflects the extreme sensitivity of the subject. The Sri Lankan authorities have strongly rejected persistent allegations of rights abuses. They've established their own investigation and have lashed out at Ban Ki-moon for deciding to set up the panel.
Barbara Plett reporting. World News from the BBC. The government of Congo-Brazzaville says 48 bodies have been recovered from the wreckage of a train crash in the south of the country and that more people are unaccounted for. It said that more than 400 people had been injured. Israel's Supreme Court has waived 2-week prison sentences handed down to 13 ultra-Orthodox Jewish mothers who'd refused to send their daughters to a mixed Jewish school. 9 more were allowed to avoid jail until their husbands have served the same sentence so that their children are cared for. A group of more than 50 mothers and fathers had been sentenced for defying a Supreme Court ruling against segregated schools. The United Nations says Peru has overtaken Colombia as the main producer of coca leaf, the raw material for making cocaine. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime said a fall in production in Colombia over the past decade showed the government's policies were paying off, but it said it was worried by the increase in Peru, where coca production has doubled over the past decade.